Hey, how's it going, do-it-yourselfers? Welcome to Fix All the Leaks Day on the Jaguar project. Coolant leaks for you, engine oil leaks, transmission oil leaks, and we're gonna try to fix some of them. So the oil leak up top here that you may be able to see is coming, looks like coming from our valve cover, so we're gonna replace the valve cover gaskets. Also, there's a coolant leak coming from that old rusty clamp and coolant hose as well. And there's also a transmission oil leak coming from our transmission oil pan gasket. But before we raise the car and start draining our fluids, we're gonna remove our coolant reservoir cap so that we can drain the coolant much easier while we're down there. And then we'll raise her up. All right, so let me show you guys. By the way, for the remainder of the video, we'll be going in from the driver's side, but most of the time you guys will be looking forward from the rear of the car. So first, here's our transmission oil pan. You can see we're leaking pretty bad here at this gasket, which has lots of RTV silicone on it. Then going forward, there's our, what looks to be coolant leak. That hose clamp that I showed you, it's right above the engine on this side. And we also have some engine oil leaks. Some of it is coming from our valve cover gaskets. Other parts of it is coming from our engine oil cool lines, which are up there, and they're on back order. They'll be here hopefully in the next few days. We'll have a separate video for that maybe. But before we drain our coolant, we're gonna have to remove this cover to get to our radiator. And this is held in, it looks like, by these two bolts on the side. And these seem to be 11mm bolts, and we don't need to remove them completely. We just need to loosen them. There we go. All right, so I actually don't see a drain valve on this radiator, so what we're gonna do next is to loosen this hose and drain our coolant. All right, so in order to get this down so I can get my hand in there and remove these hoses, there's a 10mm bolt here, a Phillips head screw here that we're gonna remove. That will allow to lower this a little bit so that we can remove that hose much easier. Now this screw is rusted, so we're just gonna remove this bolt. There we go. Now we get that out. Now this can hang down just a little bit more so that we can hopefully, there we go. All right, next we'll have to wait for that to drain out and pick up from there. All right, after we drain all the coolant out, we'll reinstall our hose. We'll retighten our clamp, reattach these little brackets to the radiator support, and then we'll throw this cover back on here as well. And tighten it down. All right, then we'll move on down to where our transmission oil pan is. And now this doesn't have a drain plug either, but it's got this tube that we're gonna remove to drain out all the transmission fluid. All right, so we'll crack this guy loose. And actually, this is our transmission oil dipstick tube. So yeah, now we're gonna let this drain into our catch can. In order to completely remove this, there's another clamp up top towards the top of the engine that we should have removed when the car was on the ground, but you know, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference. We'll just push this to the side and this will drain out. It just might take just a little bit longer. Now while that's draining out, we're gonna go ahead and remove all the 10mm bolts all around our transmission oil pan. We're gonna leave two on the sides just in there, just so that when we do remove our transmission oil pan, it doesn't come flying down. All right, so next we're gonna remove our pan. And we're gonna do this, we're gonna hit it with our mallet from side to side. Oh, look at that. It actually loosened already. Must be our lucky day. Get these two bolts out of the way. And now this should come out. There we go. All right, so here's a look at the transmission side. As you can see, the mating surface, it's all even all the way across. I don't see any reason to use RTV. Definitely not on the transmission side. All right, so here's a look at our pan. I just pulled off the gasket off our pan. Now, of course, we get the old RTV on the pan side. Now, again, if you're gonna be using RTV, this is where you wanna use it. You wanna use it on the oil pan side. You don't wanna put it on top of it and put it against the block unless, you know, there's uneven surfaces on the block or, you know, the manufacturer asks for it. But generally speaking, if it's, you know, if you're gonna put RTV, you put it on the oil pan side because it's more likely on the oil pan side to be some unevenness. So you wanna cover that up. All right, next we're gonna take some time and clean our oil pan. Nothing fancy here. Some brake clean, rags, a razor scraper, and the good old carbide tipped gasket scraper. Now these work really well on the block side, but on the oil pan side you gotta be really careful because they can damage and scratch and scrape your oil pan, and then that will cause a leak of its own. All right, so it's been about 15 minutes later, and as you can see, we're clean for the most part. And on this one, I did not use my carbide scraper because, as you can hopefully see this raised edge on this oil pan? That's what does the sealing. As you can see, it goes all around the circumference of the oil pan, all around the bolt holes as well. So you pretty much have to make sure that's nice and smooth and clean. If you use that carbide scraper, you could scratch that up and then you could get leaks there. So I only used the razor scraper and some brake clean. Spent a little bit more time, made sure all the silicone is removed from the bolt hole and that everything is cleaned. I'll clean the outside of the oil pan once it's on the car. But next, in order for our rubber gasket to stay in place and all the bolt holes match up, I'm going to put just a dab of RTV silicone, and I'm talking just a dab on the outside corners, and then throw our rubber gasket on here. And then once we line up the bolt holes on one end, I have these pieces of sheet metal that I like to use. Put going on there. And now we'll let that sit. All right, now before we put our oil pan on, I've actually lowered the car, and I'm gonna come up here and I'm gonna loosen this bolt that's holding our transmission oil dipstick tube in so that we can, reattach it on the other side to the oil pan a lot easier. Again, I'm not gonna remove it completely, just loosen it so it has more play and give, so, we can maneuver it in place down there a lot easier. Here, this should help. All right, so back underneath, we're gonna remove these 4 screws that are holding our transmission oil filter in. There's one. Have a catch can ready. And the last one, and here's our filter. All right, so in order to get our new filter in, we're gonna have to remove this filter from this housing. These should come apart fairly easily. Then we'll put this back on here, and then we'll run the screws in. Hopefully this gasket will keep them in place, yep. So yeah, while holding the screws in, we're gonna go ahead and put it on the transmission. I think we got it. Yep. All right, next we're gonna clean the mating surface of our gasket. Get some brake clean and some rag. Should make easy work of it. Luckily we have no RTV silicone sticking to this surface. And then what you wanna do is to thoroughly clean inside of each bolt hole. You wanna use a thread chaser if you have to, because if those are not thoroughly cleaned, the oil that's in there, it will help unscrew or loosen the bolts that you're gonna put on later. And then once those are loosened, that's where you get your oil leak. So you wanna make sure all the bolt holes are thoroughly clean. And next we'll take our pan bolts to our custom bolts washer and clean them off as well. You want to get all the oil and the old RTV off of these bolts. Wait a minute, I see an imposter. Next we get our pan, we grab one of our bolts with some blue thread locker on them. We're going to put some blue thread locker on all of them actually, and then we're going to run them down. And of course you want to go as always from side to side. Next, we're going to torque everything down. I don't know the torque spec for these, but I'm going to torque him down to 9 foot-pounds. 1, 2, and here's the last one. Now we'll wipe everything down. All right, next we're going to install our oil dipstick tube, but first, I'm going to put a little bit of thread sealant on this, and we're going to try to start this off by hand, just to make sure we're not going to be cross-threading this. You know what, actually, I can reach up there and completely remove that upper bolt that's holding this in from the bottom. So we're gonna do that. Here's the bolt up top. All right, now, in a much safer manner, we should be able to tighten this. All right, we're down here as far as the transmission oil pan gasket goes. Now we're gonna lower the car and get on the coolant leak. All right, so back up top, here's the clamp we need to loosen on one end of this hose, and here's the clamp on the other end. All right, once we loosen the clamps, get this hose, it will twist through. There's one end, there's the other end. And here's a close-up shot of our culprit. This is the side that goes into that valve, that's for our heater cord. This is the side that goes into that coolant pipe. And if you can hopefully see, this pipe is pretty old and damaged. and corroded, and it's probably our culprit. All right, so next we're gonna clean up the flange on that side and also this flange right here as well. And of course, we're gonna be doing this with some brake clean and some medium grit sandpaper. All right, next we'll grab our new hose, slide on our clamps, and get it on there. You can put some coolant on the hose to make it slide in easier, but you don't necessarily have to. And next we'll tighten our clamps. All right, so next the plan was to install our valve cover gasket, but I just realized my valve cover gasket does not come with the half moon seal that goes in the back of these valve covers. And as you can see, we're leaking pretty badly from that area, so we're gonna have to replace those. Also, one of the cooler lines just got here and the other one is on the way, so we'll do these and the valve cover gaskets at the same time. All right, so next on a level surface, you wanna add approximately how much transmission fluid you drain from the system, back into the system through the transmission or lipstick tube, and you can check the transmission fluid level, both hot and cold. This is of course with the engine running and transmission in park. And then of course you want to add coolant to your cooling system, open up the heater core and run the engine for 15-20 minutes and keep on adding if need be. Also, if you're wondering, yes, this would be the perfect time to use the cooling system pressure tester to test and see whether we have other leaks before we add coolant to the system. But unfortunately, the one I have, the adapter for it, leaks on this, so I can't use it. Now, don't forget to hit that bell notification whether you want to see me do more videos on this Jaguar, the RS6, the Prelude, the Del Sol, the Lexus, Subaru, and a new project that I just got yesterday that's parked outside, and I think that's going to be a fun and pretty big project for the future. So yeah, hit that bell notification, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe. Watch these videos in the meantime if you like. Also videos in the suggestion box, those will work as well. All right, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.